What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater, up in this piece. And I wanted to make this video after, I had this thought a couple of days ago in one of my other videos, actually, where I made a point about how everyone in wrestling nowadays somehow needs to be presented, as an up-and-comer, right? Where it's like, this person is not good off the bat. They have to suck ass first, then they have to become good. Now, I understand why, because the current crop of wrestlers is just so bad that it wouldn't make any sense, for example, to present Tony D'Angelo as a dominant force, right? It wouldn't make sense to, present Obafemi as an undefeatable guy, right? Because he's a rookie, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you need to have some kind of stability before you can get pushed in any capacity, way, shape, or form, right? So here's how it goes. You know what I mean? We need people that are prepared to be good wrestlers, but basically, you have a situation where these good wrestlers are good wrestlers without even really wrestling for that long, right? So I'm thinking your Brock Lesnar's, your Kurt Angles, right? People that are good wrestlers, and they're going to be good wrestlers because they're athletic, they're coordinated, etc. Even Logan Paul will put him in there, that's the kind of wrestlers you need to once in a while push to the moon, right? Even Kurt Angle, who is probably the lowest example of these in terms of the fact that basically, you have Kurt Angle and he's an Olympic gold medalist, but the fact of the matter is that he has to start with being the European champion, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter because almost immediately he wins the Intercontinental title, and then almost immediately he, the next year basically, he becomes WWE champion, right? So it's the push needs to come fast. And this is what makes wrestling great, right? The last person that I can think that did this, and did this well, would be either Sheamus or Del Rio. I'm not sure which one kind of did it better, right? Because they both kind of had some hiccups here and there, right? But Del Rio's debut, for example, is he debuts, he challenges Rey Mysterio, who is a main eventer at the time, and beats him via submission. Now, automatically, as you're watching this, you're thinking, holy shit, this guy is a big deal, right? He just beat the number one contender, basically, right? One of the former champions, via submission, Then it turns out that he is a big deal, and that's why he gets the massive push that he gets. Del Rio is so underrated in terms of the pushes that he got. I mean, I don't think he deserved most of them, but it's he won Money in the Bank, he won Royal Rumble, he won the title several times, he became a mid-card champion, he did everything, you know what I mean? And that's something that's very, very interesting. We need people like that once in a while. Not everyone has to be presented as they're not good enough to do anything, and then all of a sudden they're good enough to do that one thing, and then they just keep moving up the card with the same storyline. Like Gunther, right? Oh, can Gunther win the UK title? Yes, he can. Oh, can Gunther win the NXT title? No, he can't. Can Gunther win the Intercontinental title? Yes, he can. And then can Gunther become world champion? Yes, he can. It's the same fucking story, right? How about just bringing Gunther day one and have him debut on Raw, especially if he's supposed to be this really, really good wrestler, right? If he's this really, really, really good wrestler, Gunther should be someone that can go on Raw and SmackDown and just immediately challenge, I don't know, at minimum, a Seth Rollins, right? Challenge Seth Rollins, just pin him. Just like Del Rio did to Rey Mysterio. But instead, he has to go and fight Joe Coffey, who I don't even know the difference between him and his brother, He has to fight these jobbers in NXT UK and then lose to Ilya Dragunov, who's never going to make it in any capacity. You know what I mean? The fact of the matter is exactly as it is. You need people that are big, big stars. You understand me? That are big, big stars and that can come in and be put in that category immediately. Now, this is something that, as I said before, used to happen, right? And there's an element there that is very important that must be noted, right? The ability of superstar type people to essentially jump over the intermediate mid-card titles. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe some nerd will be like, nah, you're wrong about this, hater, me, right? But as far as I know, The Undertaker never won the Intercontinental title, right? Oh, at one time, there was an interpromotional match. It was AWGP versus AAA, and Undertaker was a guest, and he won the Intercontinental title from El Terrible Jr. Like, shut the fuck up, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the real WWE here, right? Undertaker never won the Intercontinental title because the Undertaker didn't need to win the Intercontinental title, right? In many ways, it would be a step down for the Undertaker to win the Intercontinental title because he's the Undertaker, right? He comes in there, either he's going to be a main event or he's going to be a complete flop, right? Just like with Batista. I think it was Jim Cornette or Dutch Mantel who was like, look, with Batista, it was simple. Either this guy's going to be a mega star or he's going to be released, right? There's no room in the WWE for like Mason Ryan, right? If you look like Batista, you either got to get it together and become a mega star like he did, or you got to go because it's like, otherwise it's just silly. And it's like, you can't have a guy that looks like that lose to like, up and coming like Sami Zayn. That's just stupid. So that's the idea, right? You're too beastly to like be anything but those two things. But think about that. You're too beastly. I don't think Batista either won the Intercontinental title or the US title, right? Like, this title shouldn't be a prerequisite to being a main eventer. And if you think about the intersection of people who have never won a mid-card title but have become world champion, they're all like mega legends, right? You got like The Undertaker player, Big Show, you know what I mean? Fucking Batista. Now, some of them, of course, weren't destined to be great. Like Stone Cold wasn't destined to be great, And some people are destined to be great, like Cena and Orton. And Cena gets like one U.S. title run, and then the rest of his career is world titles, and with the occasional U.S. run here just to like make things interesting, right? It's not like CM Punk or Seth Rollins, who are largely mid-carders, or Finn Balor, right? Finn Balor can go wrestle Lashley and Seth Rollins for the Intercontinental title in a triple threat match at Mania. I think that was one of the matches, and nobody gives a flying fuck, because that's where he belongs. But if you're a megastar, you should just, like, for example, Braun Breaker, in my opinion, if you're going to present this guy as a megastar, you don't present him as a guy that has any interest in the NXT title or the Intercontinental title. No, this guy doesn't go to NXT. He goes directly to the big leagues where he becomes a star or he fails. Nothing wrong with that. I like Braun Breaker, but I'd rather have him fail now than be like there for 9 years then fail. I think that's even more fair to him, right? And that's the thing. We need at least the possibility of this happening because I understand it's not easy, right? It's not easy to find someone that can do this, Like I gave Del Rio as an example. Sheamus, kind of, right? Like he did start out in ECW where he was destined to do nothing, trading wins with Goldust. But then immediately after that, they moved to Raw, put him in a program with Cena, became WWE champion within like a month, That was a big deal, You had people like Wade Barrett who were pushed like that but didn't quite make it, you know what I mean? The reality is you need people that are like that. It shouldn't be weird for like the WWE to sign someone, not like someone like Jacob Fatu or, like Hammerstone or anybody else from a different company. I'm talking about they signed a new guy, a 22-year-old, right? Like, remember that guy, like, what was his name? Like the lackey of Joe Gacy, like Joe Gacy's lackey, right? Like that guy who was like bald, like Parker Bordeaux or whatever his name is. That guy, right? Like that guy is someone, just based on appearances alone, maybe he has the voice of like a retard, I don't know. But that guy looks the part, right? Like, just bring that guy immediately and have him destroy everybody, right? Obafemi, right? Who, in my opinion, wouldn't fit this, but he's the best example I've got because everybody else is like a skinny loser, At least Obafemi's not skinny. Obafemi, if he, let's say he like lost 20 pounds of fat, maybe 30 pounds of fat, and gain about 25 pounds of muscle, Obafemi could come out there and then he could just go and like his first feud should be like, oh, Obafemi appears, and like the guy that's in the ring is like Sami Zayn, right? Obafemi just obliterates him, leads to a pay-per-view match where Obafemi just squashes him in 2 minutes. The end. That's it. Then Obafemi goes on to become a star. You can't build a star the way that they're building someone like Gunther, right? Where it's like, all right, we need to give this guy every title we can to try to make him look interesting because he's not interesting, right? It's not believable, right? It's not believable that Gunther can go in there and just like destroy everybody, right? It's almost believable, except he's skinny fat, But you understand what I'm getting at, right? If you have someone that really has something special, right? Someone that has what it takes, you need to like Brock Lesnar them. You need to Batista them. Or maybe, at the very least, John Cena them. You know what I mean? Have them be a mid-carder for like a year. And then after that, it's sink or swim, motherfucker. Simple as that. You know? Like, that's how it should be. It shouldn't be any deeper than this. You know, Cena and Batista, they benefited from the fact that, like, they just started out in WWE when like, everybody left, basically, right? When, like, The Rock and, you know, Stone Cold left, and Brock Lesnar left, and Goldberg left, and Jericho left for a little bit afterwards. You know, there was nobody else, so they're like, all right, we're going to just have these guys, right? But, like, wrestlers moving up the card should be the exception, not the rule, right? That's why the Jey Uso, you know, situation is so interesting, because he feels like an exception, right? You know, he's not, because so many other people start out as nobodies and then all of a sudden become WWE champions, like Kofi Kingston or Daniel Bryan, you know? Like, this happens nowadays. But, or even Mustafa Ali, who almost did it instead of Kofi, you know? This happens. But it doesn't feel like an outlier, right? Because it's just the way things happen. The same way that, like, Kofi Kingston has his WrestleMania moment, so does, like, Gunther now. So does Drew McIntyre, right? All of a sudden, Drew McIntyre was a lackey. You know, people forget this, you know? And there was a guy who I forget his name right now. I should know it, but I just forgot it, right? I think it's Clint or something. I could be wrong. I could be confusing people. But he's a guy that I've noticed. You know, he makes good points in my comments. And he was like, why are you, like, you know, so pressed, basically, on saying Drew McIntyre is the jobber, right? Like, why are you using him as the example? And that's a good point. Like, I don't have anything specifically against Drew McIntyre. I'm using him as an example because I feel like a lot of people wanted him to win the Rumble, right? But people forget that his rise to, like, main event was the same shit as everybody else. It's literally the same thing as Jey Uso, except he didn't have any success. Jey Uso, at least, is like one of the greatest tag guys of all time. Drew McIntyre was on nothing when he won the Royal Rumble. You know, people forget these things. You know, it's like they look at Drew McIntyre, they're like, I like him, and then they forget everything else that comes along with that, right? Drew McIntyre was an abject failure until he won the Royal Rumble. He had a shit career. He wasn't even a mid-carder. Drew McIntyre was a lifetime undercard underachiever, right? He had a few stints with the mid-card belt, but realistically, those were like in 2006 or some shit, you know? Since then, Drew McIntyre was a jobber. He was part of 3B. Then he had another boring-ass like faction in TNA. Nobody took this guy seriously. Then he joins WWE Raw, and he's like, I'm motivated, but Dolph Ziggler isn't. Oh, no, sorry. He was with Dolph Ziggler, but nobody else is, right? Shut the fuck up, you know? Then all this motivation leads him to being a lackey for Baron Corbin, right? And then, before you know it, he loses like 7 matches in a row. Then he wins the Royal Rumble, you know? What? So it's like this idea that people like deserve it, you know, like this there is a precedent for this, you know? Jey Uso is not the biggest jobber to win the Royal Rumble. Cucky Rhodes, Stardust, won it twice in a row. Drew McIntyre of 3B won it like a few years ago. Are you kidding me? That's the era we're in, right? And that's exactly what I'm trying to combat with this video. That's my point. My point is, how about bring Drew McIntyre in as the chosen one, Drew McIntyre, and then he just goes and beats everybody up and becomes WWE champion. And now you would have had Drew McIntyre today, exactly where he is now, but he would have been like a 10-time world champion. He would feel like, you would have like one more Randy Orton, you know? You would have one more Randy Orton than you do, but instead, you fired him so you could like push up the card slowly some other jobber that nobody cared about, like Dolph Ziggler, who's had more opportunities than anybody. You know, what I'm saying is this: bring in someone awesome and push them to the moon. Once in a while, motherfucks. I'm not saying do it for everybody, you know? Like right now, for example, at this current juncture, it shouldn't be done. There isn't anybody that deserves it. Not Obafemi, not Trick Williams, not Tony D'Angelo, not anybody on the main roster except for maybe Logan Paul, right? But it's too late for him because he's been around for a minute. But you get somebody that is worthwhile, and you push this motherfucker immediately. Like, if they were to debut in this landscape, here's how you do it. You debut someone. Let's call him Bradley Boy. Bradley Boy, you know, comes out and debuts on Raw. Here's what happens. Gunther's there, and then you hear Bradley Boy's music, which in my head sounds like this. Oh, yeah! And then Bradley Boy, who I'm envisioning as some sort of like Texan, you know what I mean? Hashtag push Bradley Boy. Bradley Boy goes and says, Gunther, I'm not impressed with your European shit. I want to kick your ass for the title. Gunther does the whole, who are you? He says, I'm Bradley Boy. You know? Where are you from? From the hater's mind, motherfucker. Right? And then all of a sudden, Gunther and Bradley Boy have a match because Bradley Boy goads him to putting his title on the line, and Bradley Boy just wins. That's it. You've just made a star just like that. You don't need the star to prove himself or herself. You can just make one, motherfucks. It's almost like people that are in charge of wrestling forget that wrestling is not real. You know, they think it's like, oh, in order to be a starting quarterback, you first have to be a third-string quarterback. Number one, no, you don't, obviously. And number two, that's only true in real sports. And in the real world, that's true. Like you're not going to go from, like, nobody to, like, you know, CEO, right? You might have to work your way up the company or move around companies or whatever the case may be. But that's one thing, not another. The reality is, in fake sports, none of that is necessary. In fake sports, you can just say, this guy is now the number one guy, you know? And nobody should be losing their mind over it, you know? Maybe the push that I gave as an example is a bit extreme, you know? Becoming WWE champion on your first night, you know? That almost never works. You know, it happens with people like Paige, and, you know, we all know how her career went. Complete disaster, complete loser. But anyways, do that once in a while. Have someone come in and beat, like, maybe don't beat Gunther, but have someone come in, debut, like first match, and they beat, like, I don't know, Sheamus, right? Like a good hand Sheamus. They beat Drew McIntyre. Hell, they beat CM Punk clean. You just have somebody. Let's say Obafemi was never in NXT, and you're like, Obafemi appears, and he goes, CM Punk is like, I want to kick your ass. CM Punk's like, I'll show you what's up. And then the match starts, boom, fall from grace, pin with 1 foot. That's it. You've made a star. You know? You've made a star. That's how you make stars. That's why we have the term putting someone over. You know what I mean? Because the idea is, if nobody can beat John Cena, and then, like, I don't know, Felipe Escalante can beat John Cena, then all of a sudden, that makes Felipe Escalante look good. But when everyone can beat Drew McIntyre, and everyone else can also beat Sami Zayn, I don't give a flying fuck if Braun Breaker beats Sami Zayn. It's not impressive, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I can beat up Sami Zayn, you know? So that's what I'm getting at. You need impressive people, and you need impressive pushes. In order to do that, you need to have impressive wrestlers, right? You can't just do this and force it down people's throats. You need to have the correct wrestler and the correct alignment, right? You need to have someone that's like, all right, we're going to put not all of our eggs, but we're going to put a shit ton of eggs in this motherfucker's basket. Like, we're going to take this Del Rio guy and we're going to push him. We're not going to care about, like, Tyler Rex or Santino Marella or, you know, Ezekiel Jackson. The one that we're pushing right now is called Alberto Del Rio, right? You put a lot of eggs in this basket, and it pays off or it doesn't, right? Sometimes it doesn't. But the problem is, this pussy-ass way, this like cowardly way of pushing people now is to just test the water, and then push eventually. And then you still are left with the same shit. You still have to hope for the best, right? Just because Gunther was Intercontinental Champion for a long time and UK Champion for a long time doesn't mean that all of a sudden now everything's cool, right? He could still fail, and in fact he is. That's why they're like, oh shit, have Jey Uso win, he's going to beat Gunther, and everything will be good for the world. I hope that happens, to be honest, at this point. Like, anyone but Gunther. You know, I feel like Bray Wyatt. Anyone but you, Gunther. Yeah. So, with that being said, motherfuckers, that's been the video for today. Feeling like doing a culture vid soon. So, give me some culture vid ideas that you got. I was thinking of doing a video on Kanye, but we'll see. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll do a poll. We'll deal with it then. Cuckwads, take care of yourselves and your mothers.